How's it going, guys? I'm the Stock Retro Gamer, and welcome to the contentious world of which did it first. Let's race. Who's the fastest? This is an argument video games have let us settle for over 40 years, be it via car, motorcycle, jet ski, or futuristic spaceship. Racing games have more or less been present for as long as video games themselves, and they've only gotten faster, more realistic, and more outrageous. They give us the opportunity to go at very high speeds, in vehicles we'll never get the chance to operate, or from the safety of our own homes, and they're damn fun. I want to find out which were the first racing games to pioneer the standards that we know today. Join me, the Stock Retro Gamer, as we look at racing games and which did it first.
Three, two, one, go!
For the first racing game, I'm going to touch upon a few games that could be argued to be the first, and I'll let you decide which qualifies. Released in 1972 with the Magnavox Odyssey, Wipeout is a racing game that had you racing up to 4 opponents and is the very first racing video game representation. Players would manoeuvre their vehicles across the screen in the fastest time. This bouncing back and forth ball was used to time your run. Since this was the Magnavox, then a plastic overlay would be used for graphics. Very rudimentary, but for the time, this was the racing game choice. Released in 1973 and developed by Atari, Space Race is an arcade game that has you racing rockets from the bottom of the screen to the top, avoiding asteroids. If you got to the top of the screen before your opponent, then you'd get a point. The player with the most points when the time ran out is the winner. It was also the first racing game to have you dodge obstacles. Space Race could be considered the first ever racing video game, since it didn't use a plastic overlay and was all on the screen. Very basic in its presentation and gameplay, but groundbreaking for the time. Released in 1974, also by Atari, Grand Track 10 is an arcade car racing game that has you driving around a racetrack, passing as many checkpoints as you can before the time ran out. The arcade cabinet would have you using a steering wheel, pedals, and a gear stick to play the game, which kinda makes it the first primitive racing simulator, if you think this counts as one.
Nah.
It would be the first racing game where you control something that resembled a race car. Again, very bare bones in its presentation, and relied heavily on you using your imagination.
3, 2, 1, go!
The majority of racing games will have the camera positioned behind or above your vehicle, and the track and scenery will be a continuous scrolling graphic that disappears as you go. This scrolling road effect will be the standard of all racing games. Released in 1974 and developed by Taito, Speed Race is an arcade racing game where you control your race car from a bird's eye viewpoint. The player would use a steering wheel for directional controls, and your aim was to avoid colliding with your fellow drivers to score points against the 90-second time limit. Speed Race was the first racing game to use a continuous scrolling road mechanic, which meant your road graphics would simulate the movement of the road and surroundings. This mechanic became a standard in racing games, creating a more immersive and dynamic gaming experience. This footage is actually of a later updated version of Speed Race, as I was unable to source a Speed Race ROM. This is how the original Speed Race looked. Speed Race set the foundation for all subsequent racing games, enhancing the sense of speed and progression. Such later games like Night Driver and Pole Position would find fame with this method, establishing it for all racers.
3, 2, 1, go!
The majority of racing games will give you the option to view the action from the first-person perspective. This viewpoint really enhances the sense of immersion for the player. Released in 1976 and developed by Atari, Night Driver is an arcade racing game that featured a black and white display and a plastic overlay as your car. The aim was to simply complete the circuit without touching the roadside reflectors and build up points. You had the choice of novice, pro, and expert difficulty. Night Driver is the first racing game that let you view your action in first person. It did this by having a plastic overlay of your car bonnet on the screen, which created the illusion that you were in the driver's seat. It had a little help from the arcade cabinet too, which was just badass. Gaming in the first person in the 1970s was unheard of. The only other game I can think of that attempted this was the first FPS, Maze War, from 1972. Now, obviously when it came to things you could see in your innovative first-person view, it was very limited, only giving you your car bonnet and the road reflectors for guiding you. So again, your imagination was your friend with this game. Nevertheless, Night Driver attempted something in racing games that was groundbreaking, and this was when video games were barely a thing themselves.
3, 2, 1, go!
Motion-controlled arcade cabinets transformed the gaming experience by integrating physical motion with gameplay. With advanced hydraulics tech, these cabinets could tilt and lean, simulating real-life physical sensations of riding your vehicle. Released in 1985 and developed by Sega, Hangon is an arcade motorbike racing game where you would race other bikers and the clock to progress. The game was notable for being the first to have 16-bit graphics, or superscalar graphics. Hangon was the first arcade to have a motion-controlled cabinet. The deluxe version of the arcade featured a full-size motorbike chassis, with a screen built into the front facing the rider. The player would tilt and lean during turns and hills, simulating the actual physical sensations of riding a motorcycle. This sensation of movement brought a thrilling new dimension to arcade racing, captivating players and setting Hangon apart from other games of the era. It was designed by Yu Suzuki, a Sega legend who would bring this technical innovation to future games such as Space Harrier, Outrun and Power Drift. Hangon not only enhanced the sense of speed and excitement, but also set a new standard for future racing games, paving the way for more interactive and dynamic gameplay.
3, 2, 1, go!
Kart racing games have you racing your opponents in various go-karts, letting you see the back and heads of your characters. They're usually a bit more light-hearted than regular racing games, with the emphasis more on fun, letting you utilise power-ups and weapons to gain advantage in the race. Released in 1988 and developed by Sega, Power Drift is an arcade kart racing game where you get to choose between 12 races. The tracks are fast-paced and resemble roller coasters with steep climbs and falls, as well as the ability to fall off the track if too careless. Power Drift was the first racing game where your vehicle was a kart, as opposed to a full-size car or motorcycle. The size of your car sprite and the lack of draw distance gave the gameplay a frantic feel, not knowing where the turns and hills would pop up. The arcade cabinet featured hydraulics for leaning during corners and hills. It was designed by Yu Suzuki, a Sega legend known for Outrun, Hangon and Virtua Racing, which is quite the CV. Power Drift, with its go-karts, cartoony graphics and frantic pace, added levity and wackiness to the racing game genre, which was predominantly focused on realistic simulations at the time. Despite lacking power-ups or collectible weapons, Power Drift set the stage for kart racing games, which series like Mario Kart later popularised, and it makes the list.
2, 1, go!
Weapons in racing games give the experience a whole new lease of life. Sure, being the fastest and the most skilled will help, but if I have a blue shell up my sleeve, then you're toast. Released in 1988 and developed by Rare, RC ProAm, or RC ProAm, is a NES racing video game where you would race 3 other opponents around short racetracks from an isometric angle. Instead of relying solely on speed and driving skill, players could pick up missiles, bombs, and other items to hinder their opponents, adding a new layer of strategy and excitement to the racing experience. Other goodies you could get were temporary speed boosts that would give your vehicle a frantic burst of energy and could be the difference between winning and losing. As you won races, your vehicle would be automatically upgraded with attributes such as better tyres and faster top speeds. The inclusion of weapons really gave the races an exciting new dynamic to master and enjoy. But stop retro gamer, you handsome devil you! What about games like Spy Hunter and Road Blasters, which came out before RC Pro-Am? Yeah, I lump these more into vehicular combat games, which is its own genre, and might get a list of their own if they're lucky. Racing games with weapons would catch on and be popularised through the Mario Kart and Wipeout series.
3, 2, 1, go!
The introduction of fully 3D graphics in racing games transformed the way racers experienced the thrill of high-speed competition. Flat-shaded polygons really gave the player a new level of immersion on the track. Released in 1988 and developed by Namco, Winning Run is an arcade racing simulation game played in the first person. You would control a Formula 1 race car in a series of races where you would need to finish first to progress. The arcade was housed in a cabinet capable of twisting and moving according to the player's input. Winning Run was the first fully 3D racing game, being able to draw up 60,000 polygons per second. This set it apart from any previous racing game that would use 2D sprites or pseudo 3D graphics. This technological leap allowed for a more immersive and realistic racing experience, as players could navigate through dynamically rendered environments with a sense of depth and perspective that was unprecedented for the time. The game took 3 years to develop, and upon release was a major success in Japan, and found moderate success in the West too. It would be followed up by 2 sequels, Winning Run Suzuka GP in '89 and Winning Run '91. Winning Run's advanced graphics and gameplay mechanics laid the groundwork for future 3D racing titles, establishing a new standard for visual and interactive realism in the genre. Realistic terrain surfaces in racing games enhance the immersion and gameplay depth. By simulating the impacts of different surfaces on vehicle dynamics, it pushed the boundaries of realism, demanding greater skill and strategic thinking from players. Released in 1995 and developed by Sega, Sega Rally Championship is an arcade racing game that has you competing against several drivers on 4 different tracks. The game introduced a new level of realism to the genre with its innovative handling of different terrain surfaces. The game developer, Kenji Sasaki, wanted to produce a racing game that was different to all the others, and felt that rally racing was the obvious choice, even though it was taboo in the Japanese gaming community. Racers had to navigate their vehicles in a variety of challenging environments, including mud, gravel, and wet concrete, each affecting the car's grip and handling in unique ways. This attention to surface friction not only demanded more skill and strategy from players, but also brought a sense of immersion. By simulating how different surfaces would impact driving dynamics, Sega Rally Championship set a new benchmark for interactive realism, influencing countless racing games that followed. Sega Rally Championship would go on to have several sequels that would continue with its trend of realistic ground surfaces, and would go on to inspire such racing games as Colin McRae Rally and Richard Burns Rally.
Easy right, long, into. Easy left.
Thanks for watching this list of racing games which did it first, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Of course, be sure to mention your favourite racing games in the comments and why. If you enjoyed this Which Did It First vid, then I've covered a few more genres you might want to take a look at, so be sure to check them out. For my next Which Did It First vid, I think I'll cover run and guns, but if you have a suggestion, please let me know. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as it really helps the channel, guys. I'm the Stock Retro Gamer, and I'll catch you in the next one.